our time is better spent in Jonah asking, what is this trying to teach, and not bickering about how big the fish was, you see. So we're going to mainly focus on that. I just wanted to make you aware of the various interpretations that are out there, just for your own personal enlightenment. All right, that being said, let's go to Jonah, chapter 1 and verse 1. So, Jonah 1 and verse 1 says, "The word of the Lord came to Jonah, the son of Amittai, saying." All right, let's just pause there. Jonah is a word that sort of means dove, as you can see there. And a dove is a symbol of peace, right? The word Amittai, the name Amittai, is one that means faithfulness. And so you have Jonah, who's supposed to be a man of peace according to his name, the son of faithfulness. Now, why is that ironic? Jonah was not faithful, was he? And he did not want peace, did he? He wanted Nineveh, fire and brimstone to come out of heaven and just destroy the whole city. And so right off the bat, this book is just filled with sort of inside jokes, immediately. It's kind of foreshadowing what's about to happen. Notice that it starts off like most other prophetic books. The word of the Lord came to Jonah, the son of Amittai, saying. That's how the other ones start. The word of the Lord came to Amos, saying. The word of the Lord came to Hosea, saying. Now, the difference between Hosea, Joel, Amos, and Obadiah, the books that we've studied so far, is that they are mainly accounts of the prophet's discourse, what it was that he was teaching, what it was he was commanding, what it was he was warning. In some cases, like with Hosea, you have sort of the living parable kind of deal where he's living out his prophecy to demonstrate to Israel the meaning of his words. But mainly it's just teaching. There's not a lot of historical narrative in there, or at least that form of writing at all, right? The closest we get to it basically is with Hosea and Gomer, and then the other one is with Amos when he goes and he has that interchange with the messenger of the king, right? When the king sends a message saying, you go back down there to the south and you bother them, you stop bothering us, right? That's about the only bits of narrative that we have. Whereas the entire book of Jonah, it doesn't have any teaching in there, like Jonah standing up and saying, thus says the Lord, this, and this, or any woes or anything like that. It just kind of gives a snapshot of it. The other thing that's peculiar about the book of Jonah compared to the other prophetic books is the other prophetic books, in a lot of cases, mention specific names. King Uzziah or King Jeroboam, or something like that. And so they mention specific people that are being dealt with. This chapter, however, these chapters, the only person that is specifically named is Jonah. Nobody else in the story has a name. The king of Nineveh is just the king of Nineveh, right? There is no actual names given. And so it's kind of odd, sort of stands out amongst the minor prophets, the 12 minor prophets that we're reading from here. Let's see, there was a couple other things. Oh yeah, the other thing I want to notice about Jonah is that, and we're going to point this out as we go through, the entire first and second chapter emphasize Jonah going down. So just watch for that word down, or watch for images where Jonah would be going down, 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 down. And you'll see how that's a theme in Jonah, because it's demonstrating in the story of Jonah the entire history of Israel, and them going down and down and down and down, and away from the commandments of God, and running from God, and things like that. Okay. So the one last thing about that is that the entire book of Jonah is sort of a slap in the face of some of the Jews who thought that God was only the God of Israel, who thought basically that God was limited to them and their tribe, and nobody else really had any dealings with it at all. And so there are two different scenarios in the book of Jonah where God demonstrates that he's the God of all, of everyone, and not just those in the tribe of Israel. And so those couple of themes persist of the book, and if you watch out for them, you'll see them pop up a couple of times.
Nineveh was the capital of Syria?
Nineveh was the capital of Syria. Sir?
And that was the enemies, right?
That was the ones who had put him into captivity.
Not yet.
Hmm?
Not yet.
Yeah, this is written.
Will eventually put him in captivity.
Oh, right. I was just right.
That's the reason Jonah didn't want to do anything.
They were put in captivity in 723 BC, and Jonah is thought about preaching somewhere in the ballpark of the 8th century BC, so somewhere in the 700s, before the fall of Israel.
Yeah, before the fall of Israel. Yeah.
Right. So
And a lot of people say that him being a prophet, but he would understood that Nineveh would be the nation that God would use to punish Israel, and he didn't want Israel to come to any harm by the hands of Nineveh. Therefore, he didn't want. That was the reason that Jonah wanted Nineveh to stay in the condition it was,
right.
and have God destroyed.
Right. They, he's trying to prevent that, but that's why this book is so amazing, because it's kind of, what Jesus says in Matthew 5: love your enemies, bless those who persecute you. Jonah is being forced to live that out in these 4 chapters. So let's begin in Jonah 1, now verse 2. The very first word in Jonah after this introduction is, arise, go to Nineveh. By the way, I wanted to mention this, I forgot. Jonah's mentioned only one other time in the entire Bible, 2 Kings 45. The scripture says, he restored the border of Israel from the entrance of Hamath as far as the sea of Arabah. This is Jeroboam that's doing this. According to the word of the Lord, the God of Israel, which he spoke through his servant Jonah, the son of Amittai, the prophet, who was of Gathhepher. So Jonah's mentioned one other time, just a short little line, and there's some theories as to why that is, but we won't get into all that right now. So he says arise. So the very first word is arise. This is your opportunity. Your opportunity is to rise up, is to go in the upward direction. But what Jonah does is he rejects that upward calling and he goes towards the downward calling. Arise, go to Nineveh, the great city, and cry against her, for their wickedness has come up before me. As was discussed in Deuteronomy and Isaiah and Jeremiah and other places in the Old Testament, God did not just care about the faithfulness of Israel, he cared about the faithfulness of all the nations. They were just as obligated to follow him as anybody else. They were under the patriarchal law, in which God communicated to them directly through prophets, and they didn't have the law like the Old Covenant Israel had, but they still had standards by which they were judged. And so Jonah rose up to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. He's going in the opposite direction. So he went down to Joppa, found a ship which was going to Tarshish, paid the fare, and went down into it to go with them to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. He is fleeing the presence of God, which, in reality, you can't do, but that's the idea. So this is what Israel had done in their history. They had fled the presence of God. He's asked them to go this way with them, and they've always went the other way, seemingly. Verse 4. The Lord hurled a great wind on the sea, and there was a great storm on the sea, so that the ship was about to break up. Then the sailors became afraid, and every man cried to his God, and they threw the cargo which was in the ship into the sea to lighten it for them. But Jonah had gone below, notice that, gone below, he's going down, going below, into the hold of the ship, lain down, and fallen sound asleep. So the captain approached him and said, how is it that you're sleeping? Get up, call on your God. Perhaps your God will be concerned about us so that we will not perish. In other words, ours not answering the phone. Maybe yours will, right? And so each man said to his mate, come, let us cast lots so we may learn on whose account this calamity has struck us. So they cast lots, and the lot fell on Jonah. Notice how this reflects the typical views of those people in the world of that world. They saw thunderstorms and natural disasters and things like that as being judgments on God, and so they're casting lots to see, okay, who is it that we got to throw off this ship in order to get this taken care of? In other words, they start to interrogate Jonah here, trying to figure out what in the world he's done and who he is and who his mom and daddy is, who made the sea and the dry land. In other words, who's in control of all this. So they said to him, "What should we do to you that the sea may become calm for us?" For the sea was becoming increasingly stormy. And he said to them, "Pick me up and throw me into the sea." So throw me down into the sea. He has this whole imagery going down, down, down. Then the sea will become calm for you, for I know that on account of me this great storm has come upon you. However, the men rowed desperately to return to the land, but they could not, for the sea was becoming even stormier against them. Then they called on the Lord and said, now notice the transition here. Jonah is fleeing from Nineveh to try to prevent the message that he wants, that he's pagans on a ship who all are praying to their gods, and now he's converted every last one of them to the God of Israel. Because notice what they say. "We earnestly pray, O Lord, do not let us perish on account of this man's life, and do not put innocent blood on us. For you, O Lord, have done as you pleased." Well, not even a part of Israel are running towards him. And so it's just interesting to see the contrast right here in the first passage. And so they picked up Jonah, threw him into the sea, and the sea stopped its raging. Then the men feared the Lord greatly, and they offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made vows. It's kind of scary, burning sacrifices on a ship, on a wooden ship. You already had enough trouble for the day, but they were overwhelmed by where their authority came from to offer up these sacrifices, since they weren't priests. But again, there are Gentiles.
You ever look into that as far as that would be, if you did, I don't think it involved any fire.
Possibly.
On the ship is already
Possibly.
about the same thing that you're going to offer.
Well, the word sacrifice means slaughter, so.
Yeah, so it wouldn't necessarily have to be involved with fire.
Right.
We know that from Israel's standpoint, there is a daily sacrifice, burnt sacrifice, but there was a number of other sacrifices, if you want to sell, things that they did. So and these were pagan people, so it does quite make it down. It's kind of hard that we burn sacrifice.
Right.
Right. So like a real keep on that sacrifice doesn't necessarily have to be the fire. I think I recall where God told Abraham to go and offer his Isaac for sacrifice.
Right.
You know, so it didn't have to really be a burning offering.
And like you said, God wouldn't accept it anyway because it had to be done by a priest.
Well, in their case, it probably would have been accepted because they were Gentiles. And so, we have cases of Gentiles offering up sacrifices under the patriarchal law prior to Abraham.
Burnt sacrifice?
I don't know burnt or whatnot, but Noah and
That's what I'm saying.
Noah, and then Cain and Abel, and elsewhere.
But then these people wouldn't be bound under the same law as the Israelites would have been anyway. So.
Right, that's what I was saying. So I don't see a problem with them offering up for sacrifice. It's just interesting to see that that's what they immediately did. Because like I told you this morning, I think, all of the religions in ancient world offered up sacrifices of some sort because they saw it as basically offering up a meal to their God. All right. And so it's just interesting. You have this contrast. Jonah's going down, 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 down. And it's these pagans that he meets on this ship that end up being converted. And so he kind of ends up doing the very thing that he sought to run away from. Right? Yes. It kind of shows that he, in a sense, it kind of shows that he was what?
Human, he couldn't do it himself.
Yeah, human, but also sort of humble. I mean, he was willing to let that happen to him instead of have his, new friends perish in the storm. So that shows his selflessness on one sense, but that didn't translate to every aspect of his life, unfortunately. So in verse 17, we see that the Lord appointed a great fish to swallow Jonah. And Jonah was in the stomach of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. Then we get to chapter 2. Now, the interesting thing about chapter 2 is that from verse 2 all the way down to verse 9, if you look at the language that's used, it looks as if Jonah is quoting from several different psalms in these passages. just check your center column references or study Bibles, and you'll see just all of the references here. Psalm 18, Psalm 22, Psalm 120, all the way through there. He's referencing Psalms in his prayer. And those Psalms that he's referencing are often about Israel as a nation being cast out of God's sight and seeking repentance, or being in exile or something like that. So it's interesting to see that play into the story of Jonah. Then Jonah prayed to the Lord his God from the stomach of the fish, and he said, I called out of my distress to the Lord, and he answered me. I cried for help from the depth of Sheol, from Hades. Some versions may say from hell, and you heard my voice. For you had cast me into the deep, into the heart of the seas, and the current engulfed me. All your breakers and billows passed over me. So I said, I have been expelled from your sight. Nevertheless, I will look to the point of death. The great deep engulfed me. Weeds were wrapped around my head. I descended to the roots of the mountains. The earth with its bars was around me forever. But you have brought up my life from the pit, O Lord my God. While I was fainting away, I remembered the Lord, and my prayer came to you into your holy temple. Those who regard vain idols forsake their faithfulness, but I will sacrifice to you with the voice of thanksgiving. That which I have vowed I will pay. Salvation is from the Lord. And so, in a sense, this fish, which looked to be the doom of Jonah, turned out to be a salvation. And it was within that fish that he prays to God for deliverance. Oh, there it goes. The Hebrew word was kind of silly. But if you look here at this word, in Jonah chapter 2 and verse 1, it is specifically, daga, it is a feminine noun. Spits up Jonah on dry land in Jonah 2 and verse 10. Now, what a lot of people have pointed out then is that this is showing that Jonah was being born again, so to speak. The fish was sort of pregnant with him in a sense. And this is Jonah's transformation, like the New Covenant explains new birth in the New Testament. And so it's just interesting to see the gender of the fish, flop back. It must have been LGBT, right? The fish? No, I'm sorry. Johnny?
You saying that you kind of strange how the fish change back from male to female or whatever?
Right.
Fish does that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that is true. I know mothers, if there's too many males, not enough females, they change.
Right. Well, in this case, I think it's more of a literary device than anything. He's showing that this fish is basically bringing about a new kind of person in Jonah. One of the parts I want to look at is verse 2.
So it's the gender of the fish that changed.
He started off as a male.
Oh yeah. The gender of the fish changes. At least the word that's used. All it's showing is that the fish became pregnant with Jonah in a sense, and it's through this that Jonah's going through a new birth or a transformation. He's repenting and coming up out of it.
Okay, and just something flashed through me. When the fish ate him, it was the male dominance, and then when it just swallowed him, it was the female part of him, and when he puked him up, it was the male part of him. I don't know, just throwing that out.
Yeah, well, it's just odd that it's like that. I mean, there's different theories about. Yeah, there's theories about why it is, but this sort of new birth idea seems to be the most prevalent, and it fits well with the context. But I don't know. That's really strange. Here in verse 2, this is the part I want to bring about real quick. He says, I cried out from the depths of Sheol, from hell, from Hades. This is why Jesus says in Matthew 12, behold, I show you the sign of Jonah, that the Son of Man is going to be in the earth, he's going to be in Hades for 3 days and 3 nights. So that's where that comes from. All right. Oh, yeah.
Where he said, a wicked generation seeks after the sign, but there should be no sign given except the sign of Jonah.
Right.
As he stayed 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the whale, so shall the Son of Man
That's right.
So, is that the passage of scripture you're saying that was referenced as far as that one line?
Oh, no. See, here in verse 17, he was in the stomach of the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. But the reason why it's referencing this is because it talks about Jonah going down and being in Hades and being swallowed up and then being spit back up. It's from verse 17 all the way down to verse 10 that he's referencing. I was just pointing out the passage mentions Hades, and that's where Jesus went for 3 days and 3 nights was Hades. Yeah. He's referencing the entire story is what he's doing. All right. Chapter 3. Now the word of the Lord came to Jonah the second time, saying, Arise, go to Nineveh, the great city, and proclaim to it the proclamation which I'm going to tell you. So Jonah arose and went to Nineveh, according to the word of the Lord. Now Nineveh was an exceedingly great city, a 3 days' walk. Then Jonah began to go through the city, 1 day's walk, and he cried out and said, Yet 40 days, and Nineveh will be overthrown. And there's nothing else said about what he teaches. Then the people of Nineveh believed in God, and they called a fast and put on sackcloth from the greatest to the least of them. When the word reached the king of Nineveh, he arose from his throne, laid aside his robe from him, covered himself with sackcloth, and sat on the ashes. And he issued a proclamation, and it said, In Nineveh, by the decree of the king and his nobles, do not let man, beast, herd, or flock taste a thing. Do not let them eat or drink water, but both man and beast must be covered with sackcloth, and let men call on God earnestly, that each may turn from his wicked way and from the violence which is in his hands. Who knows? God may turn and relent and withdraw his burning anger so that we will not perish. It says more about what the king of Nineveh says than what Jonah preached. But notice that he wants not just the men to fast, but even the beasts. That's kind of sort of an odd change of events there. But this is what he commands. And they're going to go into a whole community-wide fast in order that the city will not be destroyed.
You know what's amazing about that?
What's that?
Is that Jonah is a foreigner in Nineveh.
Yes.
And he comes in and he goes through Nineveh, which takes 3 days preaching the word of God. And it seemed that the whole town, the whole thing of Nineveh obeyed what he was teaching.
Right.
Take today, you send somebody through small Arcadia.
You get honked at.
And you'll get home before you get home. Nobody's gonna pay any attention to you. That was kind of amazing. And we have easy access to God's word and know what's being taught, if it's true or not. But people don't pay any attention to it.
To give you an idea, I was just walking down the side of the road. I was doing laundry over there, and I was I walk so many minutes a day, and as I was going down, I was on the sidewalk. This car ran right up. He actually made it a point to go right up next to the sidewalk and brush right past me. I thought, Good evening. Hello. So anyways, it's just sort of interesting to see that, the whole town just converts right on the spot, right? Johnny?
I don't know if it's the whole town converted right on the spot.
Oh, yeah, well.
Jonah only went 1 day journey. He only went 1/3 of the way into the city. But when the king got message of this, the king sent out a decree and sent out messengers for them to do all this.
Right.
They didn't hear the word. They got a message from the king. But the king said for them to do it.
Yeah, that's true. He got 1/3 of the way through and it spread.
So a lot of times,
That's even more amazing.
We used to hear that by some preachers that Nineveh was 3 days journey, but Jonah made it in 1 day. No, he didn't make it in 1 day. He went.
Yeah, he went 1/3 of the way.
1/3 of the way
Yeah.
into the city.
He wasn't power walking through there.
Right.
Don't need to repent now. He was just he made it 1/3 of the way through.
But then that even hypes what I'm saying.
Right.
He didn't have 3 days. He had 1 day.
Yep.
And the teaching got from 1 day's teaching got to the king, and the king evidently must have believed it. So he made
Right.
this great command to all don't let them. Don't eat. They don't eat anything. Don't drink anything. Put on sackcloth. Even to the point of putting the sackcloth on the animals. I didn't. That was interesting because I never concentrated on that.
Yeah, yeah.
I know people were supposed to put on sackcloth and sit in ashes, but I didn't concentrate. I didn't perceive that they put that on the animals as well.
Yeah, it's just odd, isn't it?
I think, you know, it could have been that they put it on there, but sometimes when you make a statement, you mean everybody do it. You know, you mean, yeah, even the cows and dogs do it to them too.
Yeah, so some people do see it as exaggeration or hyperbole. So, especially the part about making the animals fast, because you know, that doesn't make, you know, what's that going to do for the repentance of the people? But yeah, so yeah, I guess not.
Would you just like to hear what he did preach? Just make it.
I mean, you'd want to copy it, right? Because it must have been something.
Easy, you do. That was the message of Jonah to Nineveh.
Well,
You
I
don't
mean,
Think about like Noah though, who preached for what, years?
yeah, right.
And just disregarded what he had to say. It's just interesting that, you know.
It is.
80-some years to build the ark.
Right.
84 or
Right.
something.
Yeah, we figured it out. Caused a bunch of trouble over trying to figure that out, but
Wasn't it close to that though?
yeah, it was something like that.
Nobody lives.
Disregarded it.
Yeah, we had figured out the exact number, and
I wouldn't
that
do
whole
that.
thing was just
Took a
kind
long
of,
time.
yeah, we just won't even, let's keep, whew, all right.
You have a flashback?
Yeah, all right, chapter 4. But it greatly displeased Jonah, and he became angry. Man, that's not, maybe, I don't know. It seems like if the whole town repents, you'd not be that angry, but that's not what he wanted. And so he prayed to the Lord and said, "Please, Lord, was not this what I said while I was still in my own country? Therefore, in order to forestall this, I fled to Tarshish. For I knew that you're gracious and compassionate, God, slow to anger and abundant in loving kindness, and one who relents concerning calamity." So the whole point of Jonah fleeing is that he had a sneaky suspicion that they were going to repent.
Crazy. That just sounds ridiculous.
That is crazy.
No, when you
I
read
knew
the
he was
Israel.
merciful. That's why I didn't want to go down there.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, right? It's odd.
That just sounds crazy.
Yep.
Don't forget that when we start to forget it, Jonah was a prophet. Jonah knew what God had commanded, what had said about Israel, and the role that Nineveh was going to play in that. So he thought by not preaching to Nineveh or getting God to forgive Nineveh, that would kind of take care of Nineveh, move them out of the way.
Right.
It wasn't that Jonah just hated those people and just couldn't. Well, he did kind of hate them.
Well, he did.
Kind of hate them, but that was the reason.
Right. It's an odd story. So he says this. Maybe he's a little bit dramatic here. Therefore now, O Lord, please take my life from me, for death is better to me than life. Man, kind of dramatic. Then the Lord said, I love this. Do you have any good reason to be angry? Or as my granddad used to say to the kids when they would come up and pout to him, he said, I'll never forget, we're all playing cards. We all like to play hearts. I know y'all like to play, a lot of people like to play spades, but we always like to play hearts. And my little sister Brianna came up and she's whining and crying, and my granddad looks at her and says, "Honey, sometimes you're mad and just nobody cares." Which is kind of what God is saying here. Do you have any good reason to be angry? So then Jonah went out from the city and sat east of it, and there he made a shelter for himself and sat under it in the shade until he could see what would happen in the city. So he's still hoping, all right, maybe, just maybe, they'll mess this up. So the Lord God appointed a plant, or a gourd, and it grew up over Jonah to be a shade over his head to deliver him from his discomfort. And Jonah was extremely happy about the plant. That's kind of, you think you'd be extremely happy about an entire city repenting because of his preaching, but nope. But God appointed a worm when dawn came the next day, and it attacked the plant and it withered. When the sun came up, God appointed a scorching east wind, and the sun beat down on Jonah's head so that he became faint and begged with all his soul to die, saying, "Death is better than me to life." And then God said to Jonah, "Do you have any good reason to be angry about the plant?" And he said, "I have a good reason to be angry, even to death." So he has more reason to be angry about the plant than he does about Nineveh. And then the Lord said, "You had compassion on the plant for which you did not work, and which you did not cause to grow, which came up overnight and perished overnight. Should I not have compassion on Nineveh, the great city in which there are more than 120,000 persons who do not know the difference between their right hand and left hand, as well as many animals? And that's the end of the book of Jonah. Isn't that just... See, here's what he's doing. He's presenting this question to Israel. And he's saying, you're all worried about these little things, but what about everybody else? Can I not have compassion on everyone? Am I just limited to you? Are you going to be upset at me if if you look to the New Testament times, are you going to be upset at me if I invite everybody into the kingdom? He's telling them they're being so selfish. And so in a sense, it's up to Israel to finish out this story, to listen to what God says and make the decision of how they're going to fulfill it, right?
Then this thing, they said, well, the end of Jonah says that Jonah's sitting out, left out there in the scorching heat, and he's mad just out in the scorching heat, and the sun beat down on top of his head. Well, yeah, but then I look at it like when God gave him that picture, that common sense kind of kicked in on Jonah. And Jonah, I cannot imagine somebody after God making that comparison, because maybe he didn't look at it that way. Maybe
Right.
Evidently he didn't look at it that way. But when God posed that question to him and told him why he did what he did, reason sometimes kick in. But a lot of people look at it as, well, that's how Jonah ended. The book of Jonah ended. Jonah still mad, sitting out in the sun beaming down on top of his head.
See, but it ends with an invitation
Yeah.
for all of us to examine ourselves. That's how it ends. That's the point of it.
Common sense.
Yeah.
You're gonna have you have compassion on something that you had nothing to do with, something
Right.
that I caused to grow up and then I took it away.
And you put all this work into Nineveh, and you don't even care about them.
Right.
It's crazy.
Sometimes we get mad at things that we really shouldn't get mad at because we don't see the bigger picture in it.
That's true. And a lot of it's just our ego getting in the way. I forgot. Oh, yeah, that's what we talked about kind of to begin with, wasn't it? All right. Any other little comments or questions about Jonah? We used to sing the song way back in VBS each year. Who did swallow Jonah? And we met for VBS. We met VBS Monday night, Tuesday night, or Wednesday night. Was rather Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night. And that was always like one of the last songs that we sang before we went to go get snacks or leave or whatever. And it went like this: who did? I was singing it too fast. Who did swallow Jonah? And then we'd say, let's see. And then we'd go into like a big fish, a big fish, a big fish, a big fish. Well, the guy that led the singing, first he'd bring out this little hand puppet, and the little boy's up there helping him. And he'd like making the hand puppet. Is this a big fish? And everybody'd say no. And he'd say, all right, hang on. And then we sing it again. This time he'd bring out the little bass, that waves its tail and sings, don't worry, be happy, And he'd do that, who did swallow Jonah? Is this a big fish? No. And then the fish got bigger and bigger and bigger each night. And then finally, we had this shark costume that somebody made that was like a garbage bag and a cardboard cutout over their head. And the dude would come up out of the baptistry in waders. And, finally he'd say, is that a big fish? And everybody said, yeah. And so then they had to come back next year to watch it again. So that's what we always did for the who did swallow Jonah. But that big fish costume, that was always scary for some of those little kids. They'd get kind of freaked out about it. But it was all in good fun. So, all right. At the end of every Sunday evening, we always offer for those who need to take the Lord's Supper. Is there anybody here tonight that needs to take the Lord's Supper that did not have a chance to this morning? All right. Anybody else? Jaden, you want to help me out?
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for allowing us to be able to come here once again and study your word. We thank you for all that you've given us. pray as we take the Lord's Supper that we remember how you died on the cross and shed your blood for us. In Christ Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
All right. Oh, you got the. Oh yes. Yeah, if you want to. I'll take the cup back. I'll wait for you. Thank you. All right, thank you all for being with us again this evening. Wednesday night, normal time, 6:30, for our midweek Bible study. We'll do Revelation chapter. I want to finish up some things in the end of chapter 6. Just look over some things real quick. Then we'll go into chapter 7 and talk about the 144,000. There was how many? 120,000 in Nineveh. Is that what it said? 120. So that only leaves 20,000 of us left.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah. All right. Are there any other announcements or anything? Oh, Ashley's got.
You want to have a quick after? Or-
Sure. Ashley was going to give us updates on all that information she found out about the different parks and things like that. So we'll do that right after the closing prayer if y'all are okay with that. Just run through it real quick for her. I guess we're not really looking for yes or no's. We're just looking for a report. Is that kind of the policy we've taken up now? It's just kind of, what's the numbers? All right, good. Let's go. Okay. Let's close with a prayer quickly. Then we'll ask Jimmy to lead us in that prayer, and then we'll be not dismissed, but,
Heavenly Father, we just thank you so much for the day you've given us to be together. Father, we thank you always for the creation you've given us and all the blessings you provide with us daily. Father, we pray that you will guide us in all things that are going to be approached to us or brought to us tonight, regardless of the nature of it. Father, we pray that you will help us and guide us in those decisions. Father, we thank you for Daniel and him working with us, and we just pray that you'll continue to be with, right now, Laura and her illness and family, her dad, and be with the family. Father, we just thank you for one another here in the church at Hickory Street. We thank you for the church worldwide, Father. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right, Ashley, what kind of information you figure out for us?
Okay, so I called for Brewer Park. I gave y'all the numbers on that Wednesday before last.
Right.
The small pavilion I think will work fine for us, but the only thing is I'm trying to find out for sure if we want to do a bounce house or not.
Right.
What?
A bounce house.
A bouncy
Bounce
house,
house.
like a those blow up, like a
Oh,
blow up
yeah,
slide
yeah,
for the
yeah.
kids,
Okay,
for the children.
So if we do the bounce house, I've gotten some conflicting information, so I'm gonna solidify tomorrow if we can do a bounce house at Brewer. If not, then we probably need to go to Morgan Park.
That said same thing.
They won't do it there either?
I mean, I'm not sure. That's just what I heard.
That's what you were told, okay,
Yep.
so I'm gonna double check that. So if we do the bounce house, if we're able to do the bounce house, keep in mind, I found two companies in Northport. Both were priced about $195 to $200. And they will come and set up and break it down and all of that. The issue is, one has a $300. You have to spend $300 for them to come to Arcadia.
Oh, okay.
The other starts at $195, but they charge a $70 delivery fee. So either way, you're going to be running right around.
I see. Which we could use the equipment that's already there as playground equipment.
Right. So that was my other thing. If y'all think that's a little too steep and you want to go with the playgrounds that are already there, because both pavilions have nice playgrounds right
Right.
then we might want to go that route instead of doing the bounce house. So,
That's fine with me.
I don't think we have any liability with the equipment that's on the grounds.
right.
I think there might be some liability if we bring something in.
Yeah, it could be, and we're also.
Keith, John, you think-
My question, when you rent those the bounce house, is it insured?
The equipment, or you mean like for
I'm
children?
I'm saying, yeah,
I think you
children
have to
use
sign
it.
a waiver that it's
Yeah.
insured.
You
We
have
have
to-
somebody out there and they in the bounce house playing around and
Break
somebody
an ankle.
jump on somebody and somebody break
Right,
something. And
right.
Yeah, it could be. Maybe if we had it on our own, maybe if it was on our own property, it'd be a little bit different. But since it's on public property, you know, I say and also we're looking at Brewer might not even allow that anymore.
Exactly.
And
That's
so
the thing.
let's get the one that's closest to the playground,
Okay.
and then just focus on it being a donation drive for the teachers.
Gotcha. That was the other thing I wanted to ask about. Are we strictly collecting supplies to donate to the schools, or are we going to give out supplies to students in the community? That was the part I was kind of.
If we focus it on, so the teachers are trying to get supplies for the classroom. That's what all the lists are for.
Right.
And so any crayons or colored pencils or number 2 pencils, whatever you donate, are going to go to the kids.
Right.
I thought if we direct it at the teachers, then the teachers know better than we do about who needs it and how much they need.
Right.
And so I think if we directed it at the teachers instead of the kids, then the teachers could handle that, and then we can just, allow them to take care of it as they see fit.
My only concern in this area, and y'all tell me what y'all think, I don't know that you're gonna get donations. I think we'll be the only ones donating, which is fine. I fully intend to donate. But I think if they'll come and they will, partake of the activities and eat and things like that, but I just don't see you getting many donations.
I see it.
Opposed to if we advertise it as a back to school, we're giving out supplies and we, set a number or say, hey, we're gonna give it out till we don't have any more, but the student has to be present type of situation.
Right.
That's probably gonna be better.
Okay.
And then if we have anything left over,
I was thinking about it, trying to think of ways to do that, and the way I thought was, I don't know what time we were going to do that, but if we did it like around lunchtime, since that's when most people are going to come there anyways to get a hot dog, if we did it from like 10:30 to 12,
Right.
drop off stuff, 12:30 till 2:30 or whatever, 12:30 to 2, then that's when the teachers can come in and get whatever it didn't get picked up by the kids or whatever. You know what I mean? And so they bring their teachers list if they have a list, and we let them pick things off the list. Nothing superfluous, right?
I think you're right on donations.
yeah.
I think the only thing that I can relate to that I did when I was part of a football program in Ohio a long time ago, for kids football, we individuals went out and solicited businesses for donations. And they want to be a part of that too, if their name's out there now. I don't know if any of us are interested. Say, you take 4 businesses, I take 4, you take 4, and we go and say, and we'll have it printed in the Arcadian paper that you donated to the Hickory Street Church of Christ, this company, Not Auto Parts, KFC, and it's in the Arcadia paper on Thursday. I don't know.
Just like print a
Just
thank
throw
you.
something out.
Yeah, no,
I think you're right. I don't think we're gonna
We're
get.
not gonna get people
I
aren't gonna
don't-
bring, they're gonna
Not
come to
anything
the
we'll
table.
even notice from.
Right, but the giving
And
part.
if it's much, we love to get robbed.
Oh, Lord.
We'll be okay.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's just my thought, and then, just from observing other events that I've seen so far, that generally is, they're giving, they're not really taking anything even per se.
Gotcha.
So that's just the dynamic that we're working with.
Okay.
And my thought was, like, as far as supplies, even if we just pick 5 things, like, if we all, take something, like I say I'm gonna bring crayons and paper, and you bring glue and scissors, and you bring pencils and whatever, you know what I mean? Like, and we can set a number and that be that, and see, and then, you know, of course, we can grow from there, you know.
Right.
Cause we are small in number, but I mean, we can, you know, we gotta start somewhere.
There's a middle school, the 27th from 9 to 12, giving backpacks out.
Right, yeah, they're having a big, for the county at the middle school, so.
Good.
So that's good too. So yeah, that was my thought on that. And I'm thinking, well, we have left donate. I mean, we can ask for donations, but I like the idea of the business. The issue is we're in a crunch. We're getting, that window is getting real tight.
So, what we could also do
We're only 2 or 3 weeks.
is we talked about basically selling everything Gary's house. We talked about
Dogs too?
nothing. Well, the dog's probably the most expensive item. Those, I mean, award-winning poodle like
Yeah.
champion line or whatever. No, but we thought about having some kind of yard sale or community yard sale or garage sale or whatever, where we take the proceeds from that and use that to fund something like this. And perhaps that, I don't know, perhaps that might be a better long-term goal than trying to crunch this in. I'm not sure what y'all think.
Yeah, I think that needs to be planned out on a long time. This coming about, what, 3 weeks?
Yeah, it's kind of snuck up on us, hasn't it?
So we're working with time here. I would like to say, suggest maybe this she wanted to have the cookout and then give them the supplies or whatever.
Right.
Just think you get the supplies and they can bag it and get them bagged up or whatever, and then or if you want to leave them out to where teachers pick whatever they want to. We just go ahead and furnish that stuff. You know, get over it. If you're saying that, hey, you bring crayon, I bring paper, whatever, you know, hey, that's fine. But then you know, have 10 of us here, then you got a handful of stuff, you know, Ashley said give it out till it's gone. You know, one swoop is gone, you know?
Right.
So I'm saying, hey, just get enough that where you can really do it, and then whatever left you can donate it, give it to the school or whatever.
Yeah.
So do you wanna pick like a goal, like a number that you're trying to work towards? Or?
My suggestion would be that if pick volunteers to do certain things. Daniel and Ashley was talking about the supplies and what it is that the school need. Your wife worked at the school, you work, you know, whatever. Those two people get together and say, hey, they should have this and they should have that. How many, you know,
So-
and then they can say, hey, what they want to spend.
So what we need to do then is wait until after, what's it called? Open house night or whatever?
Yeah.
And then go around to the teachers and say, hey, what's lacking? And then work off that list instead of just coming up with random stuff to give.
Now, I can tell you the list that they send home for the kids with the basic supplies, they always have like a general list of things that they say they always need throughout the year, like sanitizer, cleaning,
You got that?
different stuff. Yeah, I have one for her. They sent it home the end of the year for next year already. So, and then like in Walmart, they have the list like in the little middle
Right.
sections too. So, you know.
Well, I'm saying after the first week of school or first day of school or whatever, go try to get in touch with the teachers and say, all right, what are y'all short on? And then try to make it up that way.
Can you do that when?
Yeah, I can. Well, once the first week of school, the 12th.
It'll be the 12th of or is it the 12th?
They usually give them a week to get the supplies in,
Yeah.
or so. So after the first week of school, I'll get together with Laura to get a list of teachers' names, and then you can help me out with. I'll focus on Memorial. You can focus on West, and then we can.
This thing will be what?
We're gonna do it that Saturday before
Right. I thought we were talking about.
the 10th.
I thought we were talking about putting that off for something else because it's such a short time.
No, I'm talking about the yard sale that you was talking about.
Oh yeah.
Put that off.
okay.
Oh.
Put that off till for a later date.
Oh.
But the school supplies, you know, hey, we can go ahead and do that. If we plan on having this the 12, 10, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, this needs to start, you need to start working on that stuff now.
Oh, for sure. Right.
You know,
Right.
So if you can find out from the school, you know, what they think you may need, Ashley says she has,
Yeah.
you can give out that list and then you can go and compile all that stuff together and then just go shopping and get all that stuff.
Gotcha, okay.
Find it up and get it, you know, and then go from there.
Right. So I'll get the list from Laura that she made up, and then you get the one from Cherish's school, and that'll kind of give us an idea. We can work off those two.
Another thing you might want to think about, so stuff doesn't go to waste. Somebody said the middle school is doing this as well, giving backpack, and I'm sure they're not just giving the backpack, they're probably giving the supplies along
Well,
with
yeah,
it.
they're giving that out.
Another thing you might want to consider is going to, like, say, Laura works at West Elementary, right? Or
Memorial. Yeah.
Well, maybe you may want to consider just getting with the teacher and saying, "Hey, guess what? We're gonna furnish your class all the supplies for your class this year at the beginning of the year.
Right.
So give me a list of what you need and how many students would you have in your class."
Right. So.
And you may, because that's a way that you know that the supplies are going to go to the student and in that particular class. Now you may want to do more than one class, or you may, however that you want to go with that.
Right.
But I'm thinking if we sit down and we collect all this supplies and stuff, backpacks and everything, and if people don't show up, then you're stuck with a lot of stuff.
I mean, you could still easily get rid of that because all the teachers are looking for stuff, but.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking
I
that.
think too, keep saying that kids didn't show up to pick it up, and we want to talk about the kids picking it up. We want to let the teachers come and pick through the thing what they needed out of their group of stuff.
Yeah, but that could be the same thing. I'm saying if you get the teacher, ask the teacher, say, "Laura's a teacher. What do you need for your class this year?"
Right.
If we
check
with the teachers there at the school to see what they needed.
See, if we just focus on one or two teachers, then we're going to limit our scope.
Right.
And it's going to.
The point of this is what we're trying to, don't lose focus of the goal. The goal is we're trying to interact with the community. So if we isolate just one teacher or one school, then that diminishes what we're trying. Honestly, I don't care if only 10 people show up. The point is we have to start somewhere. And it makes more sense to advertise to the community. Even if you put on, hey, look, we're giving out enough supplies for 100 students. Look, that's 100 students in this county that don't have to worry about supplies.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah, but-
even if we pick 5 supplies, crayons, paper, glue, scissors, and one other thing, and that's what we get 100 of each of those items and put them together in a backpack or a bag or whatever. The point is we're trying to interact with the community. Is the purpose of what this is really all about.
And what I'm saying is that if you're doing it the same way you're doing it, if you send your kid to school and you expect, especially in the low grades, you expect a list from your teacher to tell them what supplies they need for the year.
Right. They already got them.
Yeah.
Okay, so if the teacher said, okay, tell the parents, you don't have to worry about that because it's been donated by the Church of Christ here.
It's too late for that though, because a lot of the parents have already got all the stuff, and tax-free weekend's coming up on the 2nd or 3rd, which is when we need to buy all this stuff.
If that's the case.
No, because the ones that can afford it have it, but then Laura's telling me all these kids come to school, they don't have any pencils, no coloring, nothing. The only thing they have is people that donate to them or anything that's left over from the other kids. That's mainly who we're focused on, is the kids that need that kind of stuff. But anyways, if we put together something on the 10th at Brewer Park and nobody shows up except for a handful of kids, all that supplies would gladly be accepted by the teachers to distribute them on the kids. At the very least, we can have some hot dogs and hang out for one Saturday, right? So, at the very least, Johnny.
We all begin to feel about things now rather than, there's nothing wrong with having a group discussion or whatever, but hey, just let 2 people handle that, hey, okay, go ahead and go with it.
All right,
Go with it.
sure.
That's the way I feel about it. And we want to keep coming back and forth, what you're doing or whatever. If somebody's going to be responsible for handling this, they can check into it, they can go and see, get the supplies, somebody need to pick them up, so those 2 people can go, 2, 3 people, whoever they want to get, can go and handle all of that.
All right, we'll give you. All right, that's fine with me. Ashley and I will give you all shopping lists on Sunday. How about that? That gives us a week. All right.
What about the food? I don't know about the food.
Oh, I want to talk about that.
Oh, okay.
About the food, what about the food?
About the food?
Talk about that.
I wanted to ask if you think your friend may still be able
Didn't
to
ask.
assist.
I-
Okay,
I saw him Thursday for a little while.
Okay.
Or no. Yeah, I saw him Thursday, I saw him yesterday too.
Okay.
I didn't mention
okay,
again.
yeah, if you,